So let's go through some of the pieces on Spanish Civil War Commander. They come in these very long game trays, which are good for the edge of the table. I'm not going to go through all the pieces, but just a few for examples. So there's the commander chits. Each one has 12 commanders, and when the commander gets promoted, you'll see that you can switch the stars here. He's promoted, and so he gets promoted to the next rank, right? The commanders have a special combat factor there to be added to the unit's combat factor that they fight with. They have just a number for AI if you play solo. There is a letter that says what quality they have. So it could be, in this case, maneuverability. This commander has maneuverability, which means you go through the commander qualities and it'll tell you what that means. And also, this is the types of units that he's best associated with, right? So, for example, if you were to take some of the nationalist armies, nationalist regular forces, you'd see here that this commander is it's good to be coupled with units with the same symbol there, okay? Based on the units themselves, the units have also the star. Only commanders with 1 star can command this unit. Other units require commanders with 3 stars to be able to command them. There's the E, that means east. It means that this unit should be deployed in the east of the country. That's indicated on the map. This is the side that they belong to, blue or red. The name of the unit. These are all regular infantry units, so basically the most the strongest forces. The black number is the combat factor. That's the amount of points that you add to the units. You add all the units up, and then you roll the dice accordingly. And the green number, in this case 3, that means the amount of reinforcement units that you can place under it. So you have these units that are blank, right? And they will take on the combat factor of that army, of that regular unit. So you can put 3 layers of these reinforcements, right? So 3 layers. Actually, it's 2 layers because it includes this one that we're looking at. So it's this one plus 2 equals 3. So there's 3 units, and each one of them will have a combat factor of 4. So in total, the fighting power of this army is 12. Next, we have militia units. So the militias are, the nationalists have the requetés in the north, and they have the Falange. The Falange Tradicionalista. These are pretty much the fascists in Franco's movements. The Republicans have a lot more. They have the Popular Front. Not really militias, but they're the first organized forces that they could do in the first few weeks of the war. They have the CNT, the big trade unions, Confederación Nacional de Trabajo. They're from mostly from the south, from Barcelona and so forth, Malaga. Then these guys are in the north. Now notice here that the CNT are anarchists, right? And that has some repercussions in the game. For example, the PSUC are both communists and also they are from Catalonia, right? Now these guys here, it's a black star. A black star surrounded by a little red lining. These are the Basques from the north. They're Catholics and they're anti-communist for the most part. So you can't really couple them with communist units. If you do that, if you put them together, then there's going to be demerits. So the problem with the left in Spain is that they couldn't work together well. Here was the UGT, another trade union. And again, these ones have combat factors of 1. And the very famous PUM. The PUM was the more Trotskyist, also anti-communist in the sense that the Communist Party in Spain was mostly Stalinist, and they wouldn't get along with those forces. So even armies that are Spanish armies that you'll see are here. Here's the Republican regular forces. These here's one for Catalonia, but some of them are straight out controlled by the communists. So you can't really put these two together. There's going to be some trouble if you do that. Then you have complicated cases where these guys are both anarchists and communists, and you know this reflects the division that existed in Spain all throughout the conflicts. One of the reasons that the left lost was because they were a lot more divided. Among the militia, I've also included the International Brigades. These were forces that were, there were lots of them. There were about 10 or 12 famous ones, but these are the most powerful, the most famous. For example, the 12th Brigade, more communists. The other ones, not so much. And these ones were, you know, they helped the fighting, especially around Madrid. Now we go into the auxiliary forces. There's a few. There's cavalry. There's cavalry. There are tanks. These ones are tanks. So these big squares here are the mobile forces. Cavalry, tanks, mostly tanks. Nationalists, Republican. Some specifically are Soviet tanks. They were all under the same flag, but this is to emphasize that they were higher quality vehicles. Then there's artillery as well. Artillery pieces, artillery units. Not so much units, but just to show the level of artillery that could be coupled in with the armies. After that, we have air forces, air units. They act independently or with the armies. Here are the nationalist ones, and these here are the Republicans. The Republicans were a little bit on the inferior side compared to the nationalists. That's why they have different numbers. But the Soviets were quite good. There's less of them, but there's a combat factor of 3 there. The other thing is despite the non-intervention committee, obviously the fascists in Spain, Mussolini sent a lot of troops, about 50,000 at least, to Spain. The Germans sent only about 5,000 land troops, but they supported it a lot with tanks and aircraft. The Portuguese, very little. Here is to reflect the Portuguese intervention in the Portuguese volunteers, the Viriatos. But then you have the Germans, with the Condor Legion troops there, land contingents, some tanks of high quality. Most importantly were their aircraft. This is the one with the highest combat factor there, the Condor Legion, some artillery. Now the Italians, they're the ones who are really, really something to talk about here. They had at least 4 Corpo Troppo Volontari, the volunteers that were really volunteer troops. There's lots of artillery. They had also some tanks, and this is the Flechas Negras, the black arrows. They were their own, their own fascist militia, and of course also aircrafts, very important. The Italians actually have commanders. They started with Roata, and then they go on to the next to the other ones. These commanders don't really get promoted; they're foreign. If the Germans actually are drawn into the war officially, then actual, very powerful. I mean, I've played the game thousands of, about at least 500 hours, and this has never happened. So it's very rare that this would happen, but the possibility exists that Hitler actually enters the war officially. In that case, these forces stay there, but you have fresh, the Deutsche Spanish Armee, the German Spanish army that is sent there under somebody. This is not historical, but probable. I chose General Reichenau. He might have been the person sent there to command these forces. And of course, they have two powerful tank contingencies. Now, if a country joins the war officially, you will see that you have these units with this little symbol here. This means that only if the country is officially at war in Spain against one of the sides do these forces go in there. The Italians can also enter officially, which means that the CTV becomes now the Regia Esercito. That means the Royal Army. And once again, you see they're officially at war. The good thing about these forces is they have a green triangle, is that they get replaced extremely quickly. So they're always pretty much on the map. On the Republican side, and it's much less probable that this would happen, but you can have the Soviets, they already have their tanks in Spain, but if they join the war officially, and there it is, it's the, here's a Soviet army that goes into action. It can have three levels of reinforcements under it, 2 levels of reinforcements under it, including this piece here. And they'd be commanded by somebody perhaps like Vatutin. Once again, that didn't happen, but just in case the events allow this to happen, then there it is. Once again, this has never even happened to me, but just because there's a possibility, a very slight possibility, and maybe there's a 5% chance that they could join the war, I've included that in the game. The French have an army as well. If they were to join officially, the chances of that happening is even less because they were too afraid of Germany for that, So they have an army plus tanks. The Mexicans, and they have the Foreign Legion, Légion étrangère. That was in North Africa. It's there as well. The Mexicans as well had a socialist government, very supportive of the Republic in Spain. If they were to join, there is a notable General Charis that would be in command. Most likely this would be the guy. He was pretty much a national hero in Mexico. There's 2 other countries that were heavily involved in the conflict, although not as much. That was United States and England, I should say Great Britain. So if Britain has probably the smallest chance of joining, they didn't want trouble with anyone. We must remember Munich is just on the way at September 1938. But if they did, the British Expeditionary Force would start off. General Gort, that's the guy that was in fact in command initially in France when the war broke out, 1939-1940. He was in command of these forces in France, so probably would be in command in Spain, 1937 or 38 or 39. The war actually can last longer than that. And here's some tank units as well. The Americans, also very little chance that they would join the war, but there it is. Their army, American Intervention Corps is what I called it. Who knows what they would call it, in fact, if that happened. And I put them led by General Leslie Mcnair. Now, I'll tell you something about General Mcnair. He was in command in World War II, and he was the highest-ranking American officer killed in World War II. He was killed in 1944 because of friendly fire. One of the things I wanted to include in this game was the navies. They're often forgotten, and you really don't want these ships to fight each other too much. They're mostly there to protect or threaten the convoys, as will be explained in the rules. But, the nationalists had the battleship España at the beginning of the war. There's those, this is representing a flotilla of destroyers. You also have a flotilla of submarines. You know, they didn't have a lot of those. The rest go on the calendar. And then there was a number of basically, you know, cruisers: Baleares, Navarra, Canarias, Almirante, Cervera. And you also have two powerful German pocket battleships, cruisers, in the conflicts. All that is historical. Some German submarines and some Italian submarines. Very important. For the, you know, in case they, you know, built these were not historical. The Galicia, I believe that wasn't it. And then there is Valencia. And here is a brand new battleship, which was never built or planned. But I figured if, you know, if there's, these are extremely expensive, but if you have the money, yeah, you get this built. I called it the Sanjurjo, which was the original, you know, head of the coup in Spain, that he died in a plane crash. So this guy died because he had so many uniforms and so many medals in his luggage that the plane couldn't take off and crashed. He was about to take power in Spain, but there it is. And that left it wide open for Franco to take power. Anyway, so there is, for the Republicans, there's some submarines, submarine units, destroyer flotillas as well, for sure. And the Miguel Nunez, Libertad. These are all revolutionary names. Interesting, Cervantes, this was, you know, the writer of Don Quixote, but there it is. We have those cruisers. And then you have the Jaime I battleship. If these guys were going to build anything, that's even more difficult for the Republic to do so, but we named this Emiliano Zapata. That's a Mexican revolutionary. And then there is the Jean-Paul Marat from the French Revolution. You know, the left, the communists were always very international, so they have these names of people that they admire. And of course, a battleship, which we would call the Vladimir Lenin. So these units are not historical, but I thought it'd be cool to include them. The rest, in the game, we have tokens. Tokens, we have, you know, some tokens for the resource points. Most of the resource points are notated on the actual board, but just in case you have a surplus, that's what these are for. Industry, agriculture, this is mostly for the gross domestic product of Spain. We have dice for the blue and for the red. Of course, we have Dungeons and Dragons white dice. These are the ones that are predominantly used. We don't use a lot of them. We only use like 2 or 3 at any given roll, usually, okay? But just in case there's situations where there's a lot of forces in battle, so you might have to use like 4 or 5, who knows? So they're all in there. And then there's these custom dice that are made. These are a 2 dice. They only have 1 and 2 score, as you can see here. There are situations where that is needed. And there's a 3 dice as well. Now, the reason this has dots, and there's only 1, 2, and 3. Those are the only scores. The reason they have dots is because all the other dice are even numbers. This is the only odd number dice. So it's to make sure that you tell them apart from this, for example, right? Then you have a fraction dice. You roll these along with the combat dice. So basically, whatever the combat dice tell you on the roll, whatever that roll is, you roll this with it. So it's 2/3 of 6. So if the score is 6, then it's going to be actually only a 4. All right. This is to hype up the combat, the improbabilities of combat. Right. After each battle, this is all explained in the rules. I'm just showing you I'm just showing you the the pieces. We have also this comment: whoever wins the battle has more points than the opponent rolls this dice. And this will decide, it decides if the person will stay where he is, stalemate, will advance, or in some cases, very rare, there's only one side, retreat. Sometimes the victor has to retreat no matter what. So that's what it's used for. It simplifies the, avoids having to use the CRT. Then you have some you know, zinc pyrite mines. You have lots of these little cubes. This is going to help the economy. Franco had it in his head to sell a lot of the mining rights of Spain to Adolf Hitler. Most of it so that in 1938 he could just get a boost and finish off the you know, the campaign in the south. There's also you know, bronze. This represents copper and mercury mines. The Spain had Rio Tinto. That was the most valuable of all of them in the south, Rio Tinto mines. And then we have these. These are extremely valuable. This represents the entire Spanish gold reserve, which was always in the hands of the Republic. And they went to Moscow. There's a whole bunch of other components. We have little flags that we use for the you know, for the victories in certain points. You know, if you have if at any given time you have 2 flags more than the opponent on the map for victories, that means your morale goes up. You have these ones to mark certain things like elite forces, things like that. There's a ton of other components here. There's some of these. You know, these are entrenchments bars. They're used to mark. You know, they'll give you an extra points for having entrenchment. There's these to represent fortifications. If you're on top of them, that means it's a fortified city. These are city markers as well to mark your cities. Attack triangles, and then some cubes for either sides. Anyway, here it is. Most of the you know, just a brief overview, not that brief, of the components. There's about, you know, well over 300 pieces in the game. Looks like a lot, but it's not that complicated. It just adds a lot of color and history to the game.